which players have risen the most in value over the last 30 days in Dynasty football. We're talking about that in today's video. Please, if you like Dynasty content, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Help us get to 800 subscribers. Join our Discord. Link is in the description. We're going to try and put together some Dynasty leagues with our listeners in the offseason. And again, if you like Dynasty content, we're going to be putting out a lot of stuff, rookie scouting, Dynasty rookie mock drafts, startup drafts, and some buy, sell, hold, and Dynasty price checks on players. So today we are looking at some Dynasty risers. Who is rising in Dynasty? I always mention this. I like to put these videos out, both risers and fallers, around the beginning of the month each month. And it's good to keep a market or keep tabs on the market, right? That's how we win in Dynasty, knowing when to sell high and when to buy low. Bo Nix has risen from 16 to 12. Pretty amazing what he's doing this year, potentially he is in the running for Rookie of the Year. And just kind of looking at where Bo Nix started, where he started to begin the year, after he was drafted, he was kind of in the low QB 20 range. And something I was telling people, because a lot of people in Dynasty rookie drafts, Superflex, were not very excited about Bo Nix, about him being the 6th quarterback taken. And he was falling in a lot of drafts to like the 2nd round. And what I always tell people when it comes to quarterbacks and rookie quarterbacks and when drafting them in Superflex is we kind of have to trust the NFL. And what is the NFL telling us about these guys? If they take a quarterback in the top 12 picks, we kind of have to respect that to a certain extent. Is it going to hit? Not always. But if it does, it is incredible, incredible value. So Bo Nix has been awesome this year. Overall, I believe he's the QB 7 overall, and he's the QB 10 in points per game. He gives you a solid rushing floor. And man, since about week 5, he's been awesome. He's been awesome since about week 5. Just looking at his numbers here, he's the QB 4 in total points and QB 5 in points per game since week 5. So Bo Nix, excited if you got him. I'm not selling him anything lower than a low-end QB1 or a high-end QB2. And I'm not really trying to buy him at this price either. So he's kind of just a hold at this point. Anthony Richardson, there's a little bit of a theme here with the next 3 quarterbacks on this list. Anthony Richardson from keeptradecut, QB 23 to QB 17. Obviously, he fell a bit after he got benched and wasn't playing well. He has come back since the benching. And he's been playing well, right, for fantasy, coming back since the benching. So I'm trying to look here. He got benched. He got benched on I think the after the Texans game, right? After the Texans game. So basically, he's played 3 games since his benching, and since then, Anthony Richardson is the QB 6 overall and the QB 7 in points per game. It's a small sample size, but 2 games of over 23 points, 1 game of over 28 points, and then a 13-point game in there. I still believe in Anthony Richardson. I would still buy him at this price. There's what I'm learning about quarterbacks in general, and look at guys like CJ Stroud and stuff. If you don't rush the ball, if you don't have a rushing floor of at least 25 yards or so, man, is it hard to get you to be a real difference maker as a passing quarterback. Even guys like Patrick Mahomes, CJ Stroud, they're not really difference makers at the position because they don't run. You get the exceptions. Joe Burrow's kind of one of them. You know, Mahomes has been one of them, just not recently. But if you don't run, if you're guys like CJ Stroud, Herbert, Jordan Love, these guys don't run. Brock Purdy is another one. They just don't give you a lot of difference-making ability. They're good QB2s, but they're not difference makers. And in Superflex, I want the difference makers. I would take Anthony Richardson over a lot of guys that are ahead of him, over Goff, over Mayfield, over Purdy. You can even argue over guys like Nix. If he reaches his full potential, he's literally a QB1 overall type of potential. And he's still so young. I believe he's still one of the younger quarterbacks out there. So Bryce Young, again, theme here. QB 28 to 23, got benched, came back, and has been playing well. Is Bryce Young ever going to be a high-end quarterback? Probably not. Can he be a QB2? in Superflex dynasties, excuse me, I think he can get there. I think he can get there for a couple different reasons here. So he also got benched, right? And I'm trying to look at. So he's been playing since October 20th, and that is looks like week 8 is when he came back, right? Week 8 is when he came back from his benching, and Bryce Young since week 8 is the QB 20 in overall points, averaging 15.7 points per game, and the QB 25 in points per game. So, and if you just look at the last couple of weeks, he's just looked so much better. 16 and a half and 23.6 points the last 2 weeks against the Chiefs and the Buccaneers. I like Bryce Young. I liked him coming out of the draft. I just hope he can get to kind of low end QB2, high end QB3 type of production. And something that I am liking about Bryce Young is that he's using his legs more. In the last 3 weeks, 2 carries for 30 yards, 3 for 20, and 3 for 17. He's kind of taking what the defense is giving him a little bit more. And then Will Levis from 34 to 28, also a guy that started off the season rough and has looked better since coming back from injury or being benched. The last 3 guys, A-Rich, Bryce Young, Will Levis, all got benched or injured. All looked kind of bad in the beginning of the season and all fell in the dynasty rankings. And now they're climbing back up because they've looked better. Will Levis has started 4 games since his injury, right? Has started 4 games since his injury, since week 10, which is the 4 games here. Since week 10, Will Levis is the QB 15 in total points and the QB 21 in points per game. He's averaging over 17 points per game, and he's giving you solid QB2 production here. And he is also running and using his legs more. Since coming back, 5 for 41, 7 for 18, and then 8 carries for 10 yards. He also has a couple games early in the season where he has over 35 yards rushing. So, all these guys, I think there's hope. There's hope. Anthony Richardson's one I'm most excited about. Bryce Young and Will Levis, I think there's still hope that teams are going to give them maybe one more year unless they fall into, a really good situation. And just 1 year of a starting quarterback, whether it's a QB3 or not, is still valuable in this league. So, guys that are still showing they have some value. Into some running backs here. Bucky Irving, man, from RB19 to RB10. I love to see it. I was a big Bucky Irving fan coming out of college. There's always the concern about the smaller backs, but I think we can kind of start ignoring those just a little bit. If a player is just good in college, whether he's big or not, we need to start looking at that more than just, oh, he's small. The NFL has changed a bit. It's more beneficial to these guys, especially when you're running a committee as well. We're not giving Bucky Irving, 25 touches every game. I know he had 25 carries this last game, but he was basically getting around 15 touches per game, and 3 or 4 of those were coming in the passing game, and that's kind of how you have to play these guys. He's super efficient. I'm excited about Bucky Irving. I think he takes over that backfield from Rachaad White. Rachaad White will still have a role, but Bucky Irving is the guy, and he's all the way up to RB10. All the way up to RB10. So with him and the next guy, I'm always willing to sell running backs just because the market is so volatile with these guys. That being said, with him and Chase Brown, who's moved up from RB22 to RB13, I want to get the value for them or slightly above the value that they're currently valued at. They're currently valued as like RB1s, low-end RB1s. I want low-end RB1 value or more if I'm going to trade these guys, because I think both these guys are going to give me a good 2025 season. And with running backs, we need to just look from season to season. We need to stop looking thinking about 2026, 2027, only think about 2025. Bucky Irving, I think, is going to be there for the Bucs. And this guy, Chase Brown, who has taken over that backfield because of the Zach Moss injury, was already kind of taking over the backfield even before the Zach Moss injury. But amazingly enough, Chase Brown is the RB14 overall, and he really didn't start to get going until about week 4. So since week 4, Chase Brown is the RB7 in total points and in points per game, averaging 16 half PPR points per game. And the reason why I'm excited about Chase Brown for 2025 is that the Bengals are not going to invest heavily into a running back. They have way too many needs. They have offensive line needs. They obviously have defensive needs. They potentially have receiver needs if T. Higgins is not going to come back to this team. And maybe they like Jermaine Burton or not, but we don't know yet. They can't go into a season with kind of their only for sure thing as Jamar Chase. They need another wide receiver. That's when they're at their best. So my whole point is they're not going to invest heavily into running back. I don't think they value the running back too much, as seen by just kind of letting Joe Mixon go. And I think Chase Brown is just through volume is going to be a good play each and every week. So Chuba Hubbard is an interesting one from 35 to 22. I'm interested to see if this falls a little bit because, I could see Jonathan Brooks getting a little bit more involved this last 4 or 5 weeks of the season and kind of seeing what you have in him. I don't think Chuba Hubbard's going to go away. I think Chuba Hubbard's going to be a bit of a problem for Jonathan Brooks. That being said, just because Chuba Hubbard got paid doesn't automatically make him the starter next year or whatever. We see that every year. Look at Miles Sanders with this team. He gets a lot of money and then gets benched after like the first 4 weeks of the season, right? I think Chuba Hubbard is going to be a problem for Jonathan Brooks. And the one thing that's in Chuba Hubbard's favor is that we know he's good. We know he's a good player. Is he like an elite difference maker? No, but he's an above average running back that can run the ball and catch the ball at a high rate. So, we don't know that about Jonathan Brooks. We don't know how good Jonathan Brooks is. So just buyers beware with Jonathan Brooks. I still think Chuba Hubbard's going to be a solid piece for your dynasty teams. 2 more running backs here. Trey Benson moving up from 34 to 27. That's fine. That's fine. James Conner did sign a contract. That being said, if Trey Benson is just good, I don't think James Conner at the age of 30 by that point, by beginning of the season next year, is going to stop him from getting on the field. That's just not how things work. They will use James Conner. He will have a role on this team. But if Trey Benson is the man, if he's what, they drafted him to be, then he's going to take over that backfield. So I wouldn't be too worried about Conner signing a long-term deal. Yeah, Conner's still going to have his role. But again, if you believe in Trey Benson and him being good, then I think he could potentially become kind of the leader in that backfield. And then Isaac Guerrero is going to get his chance here from keep trade cut 49 to 36. That's going to continue to rise if he plays well. It's going to fall if he doesn't. I like Guerrero. He's an interesting size, speed, athletic running back combination. That being said, that's not just – you got to do a little bit more as a running back. You got to have the vision. You got to know how to play the running back position. You can't just be an athlete. So I'm interested to see how he does because he has pretty amazing speed here. Drake London into some receivers here. Drake London from 12 to 9, which again, not a huge jump, but when you're already in the top 12, it is. Drake London this year, he's had a good year. I don't think he's quite had the year that we expected him to have with Kirk Cousins, but maybe that's more on our own expectations than anything, right? Like we shouldn't have expected, from where we were drafting him, we were kind of thinking like, oh, this guy's going to be, a potential, 1,500 yard receiver or something like that. Kenneth Walker's out in case you guys were waiting on that. But anyways, he has 70 catches this year in 12 games. So he's on pace for 99 catches. He has 796 yards. He's on pace for 1,127 yards. And he's on pace for 8.5 touchdowns. A very good season. Not quite, I think, what we were expecting with Kirk Cousins. I think we were expecting a bigger leap here. Maybe a lot of that's on Kirk Cousins. I like Drake London. I'm fine with kind of moving on from him. If I can get wide receiver 9 overall value for him, like if I can get kind of a haul for him, I'm fine with that. Like guys like Marvin Harrison, Puka, AJ Brown are around Drake London, and I still prefer those guys over Drake London. So I don't want to sell low on him, but I'm willing to sell on him. If someone's going to give me wide receiver 9 overall value in Dynasty for him, he's the wide receiver 6 on the season, which is great to see, but he's the wide receiver 15 in points per game. So Jordan Addison from 34 to 26 is kind of interesting. I don't know how to feel about Jordan Addison. I don't know if he's ever going to get to the point of like, as long as Justin Jefferson's there and healthy, Is he ever going to get to the point of being like a real difference maker in most dynasty leagues? Now, if you play in deeper dynasty leagues where you're starting 10, 11, 12, you have 12, 14, 16 teams and you're starting 11 or 12 guys, not including kickers and defense, then Addison's going to be a piece. But I think most people play in either 10 or 12 team leagues. And most people, I would say at most, are starting 10, right? They're starting 10 quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. And I don't know if Addison really is in a 12-team start 10, if he's really much of a difference maker here. He's a good player, and he's good for the Vikings, and he's good for whoever the quarterback for the Vikings is because he adds so much. But just for fantasy, I mean, even last year, Jordan Addison, which he was a rookie, he was the wide receiver 21 overall. That's great. I love to see that. In points per game, he was the wide receiver 28. So, he was good, but he wasn't necessarily great. This year, he is the wide receiver 33 in total points and the wide receiver 34 in points per game. There's just not enough volume there, and I think that's going to kind of stay, especially if they keep Darnold. But even if they move to McCarthy, at least for the first year, you're not going to have heavy pass volume like you did with Kirk Cousins. Jackson, Smith, and Jigba all the way up to wide receiver 13. I was telling people to buy low on JSN because just think about the timeline of JSN. He was drafted as kind of the clear-cut number one wide receiver in that draft in 2023. He was drafted a little bit later than most, a little bit later than the first wide receiver taken usually goes. What was it, 20th overall or something like that for JSN? Usually we see a receiver in the top 10. He went to Seattle, and so we all kind of knew that it was going to be tough for JSN to be a difference maker in 2023, right? He had a okay season, not a great season. It was okay and better than expected considering he was playing behind Lockett and DK Metcalf. And then this year, we were expecting a bigger jump from him, right? We were expecting a bigger jump from him. My screen's being all crazy. We were expecting a way bigger jump from him, and we didn't quite get it to begin the year. And now what we're looking at is a wide receiver who in PPR right now is the wide receiver 9 overall and 17 in points per game. He's starting to come on. So you should be valuing this guy very, very highly, in my opinion, because he's kind of on track, right? A young receiver who we kind of knew the first season was going to be tough, who is now a top at least 15 wide receiver in his second year and is starting to take over that wide receiver room just a little bit. So I like JSN a lot, and I think they're going to keep the same offensive coordinator. They're going to lead the league in pass attempts, and JSN is going to keep on feasting. George Pickens from Keep Trade Cut 20-14. Now, George Pickens is a different story, in my opinion. Again, we were expecting major, major things from George Pickens this year, and we've kind of gotten it with Russell Wilson, right? We've gotten it. It's been better with Russell Wilson. So let me just double check here. Russell Wilson has played in 6 games this year. Played in 6 games this year, and he took over in week 7. Right? He took over in week 7. George Pickens, since week 7, in full PPR, is the wide receiver 15 in total points and wide receiver 14 in points per game. So I like Pickens. He is still a little bit maybe not quite the receiver that his playmaking and talent seem to show. I think he's a great player. I'm just thinking more for fantasy. Is he ever going to be a top tier difference maker? I don't know. He's one of those guys who, kind of like with Addison, I'm willing to get back equal value for him and taking my shot on multiple pieces becoming difference makers, if that makes sense. So trading Pickens for a young receiver and a first round pick or something like that. And now I've taken my chances. I've diversified Pickens into 2 pieces and saying, I don't know if Pickens is going to hit and be that top 12 consistent wide receiver week in and week out, season in and season out. But I'm going to take my chances with these 2 guys or these 2 assets, right? And see what they turn into. I'm fine with it. I'm also fine with keeping him if you really like Pickens, because I know a lot of people do like him. Lad McConkey from 22 to 15. One thing I'll say about McConkey is I do believe the Chargers are going to spend either significant money or draft capital on bringing in a weapon. I'm bringing in a weapon here, right? I think they're going to maybe draft a tight end. They're maybe going to draft a receiver. They're maybe going to bring in a guy like T. Higgins. I don't know, but I do think they're going to bring someone else in. And I think the optics of that when it happens in March or in May is going to drop McConkey's value. Whereas I don't think it necessarily should drop his value. I think he will flourish even with another receiver out there, right? I think he'll still flourish. And I think he's still such easy targets to throw to Lad McConkey, who's on pace for 82 catches this year. He's on pace for 1,154 yards, and then better than I thought in the touchdown area, about 6 touchdowns. So I think that's who McConkey is. I don't know if he can get much higher than that. There are some people that speculated he can kind of turn into Cooper Kupp or something. My only concern with him is injuries. He was kind of injured at Georgia. He's a smaller player that plays over the middle of the field. I just hope he kind of takes the Tyler Lockett route and saves his body a little bit. 2 more receivers here and guys that have jumped up in a big amounts is both Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. And these are both players that I don't think their rankings were justified all the way down as like wide receiver 60 and 64 respectively. Jeudy obviously had the massive game, which is going to boost his value, but he's been with he's been with Jameis Winston. It's not just the one game. With Jameis Winston, I think he's a top 5 wide receiver in points per game and total points. 5 for 79, 7 for 73, 6 for 142 and a touchdown, 6 for 85, and then the huge game, 9 for 235. But even if he just had a good game, like he had 9 for 100 or something and a touchdown, he still would be like a top 7 wide receiver. So it's good to see both these guys and Courtland Sutton also being awesome. I will admit I was not excited about Sutton, but he finally has a consistent quarterback. That's for both these guys, both Jeudy and Sutton. It's important to note that they had never really had a consistently good quarterback, or at least a quarterback that's going to be slinging the ball like Jameis, right? Obviously, they both played on Denver, and they went through guys like Drew Lock. Who else was there for them? I'm trying to think of like the Broncos in like 2020. So obviously they had Drew Lock, right? We know that we know what Drew Lock is. They had guys like Teddy Bridgewater, an older Teddy Bridgewater, and then Russell Wilson the last couple of years, who Russell Wilson was just not good with the Broncos, right? In terms of his efficiency and stuff. So it's important to note that now Sutton has Bo Nix. Now Jerry Jeudy has Jameis Winston, who's going to sling the rock. Maybe this is who these guys were. And I was always talking about Jerry Jeudy, and I know he was like a bust. I still liked his underlying analytics. I still liked him a lot coming out of college. And I still said he had a couple good seasons. Like his rookie year was very good. 52 for 850 and 3. That's a good rookie year. And then he got hurt in year 2. And then year 3, he put up almost 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. In 15 games, right? And that was with kind of a struggling Russell Wilson. So I think last year is what left a sour taste in people's mouths. He's on pace for he's on pace for a career year. And it's good to see for Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton. To finish up here, we have some tight ends. TJ Hawkinson from 7 to 4. He's come back, and I think the biggest concern for people was just how would he look after the injury. And I'd say he's come back and he's looked pretty damn good. Considering he had a pretty major injury. He's played in 5 games this year. He has 254 yards, which would give him an 860-yard pace on the season. And he has 23 catches in 5 games, which would be basically he's an 80-catch, 850-yard tight end who is coming off of a major knee injury. So TJ Hawkinson is going to be a stud in Dynasty for a long, long time, still only 27 years old. David Njoku has moved up. Again, it's the Jameis Winston effect. Njoku, who had such a great run with Flacco last year, and then was kind of a disappointment to begin the year this year. and then he's kind of gone off, just like with everyone else. Like since Flacco has since Jameis has taken over. Jonnu Smith, man. Jonnu Smith, and I was lucky to be early on this train. I think traded a 4th-round pick for Jonnu Smith way back before the season even started. And Jonnu Smith, who I believe is still under contract with the Dolphins after this year, he's on pace for a ridiculous year, right? A ridiculous year. He has 58 catches. So he's on pace for 82 catches. He's on pace for 918 yards, and he's on pace for almost 6 touchdowns. And really, he didn't really start to get going until about week 5. Until about week 5 is when he really started to get going. You just look at his first 4 weeks; he had a couple dud games in there, really 3 dud games, 1 good game. Since week 5, Jonnu Smith is the tight end 3 in total points and tight end 5 in points per game. He's been awesome. And he's with the Dolphins again next year, I believe. So Tyreek Hill's getting older. They like Jonnu Smith, and I think they kind of like this style of offense because it protects Tua. So keep on firing him up. And Noah Gray from tight end 31 to 22. He's been a huge part of this offense. As of late, he's helping out the Travis Kelce thing. And remember, he was a 5th-round pick, which is not terrible draft capital for tight ends. There's been several 5th-round picks at the tight end position that have panned out. So he's been on the team for a few years. He seems to be the heir apparent to Travis Kelce if they sign Noah Gray long term. I don't think they have signed him unless I missed that. I think he's still on his rookie contract. No, they actually did sign him. So they were smart and they signed him. So they have him at least until through 2025, and they can continue with that through 2027. And I think you're kind of looking at the guy that is the prime candidate to overtake Travis Kelce and kind of take over his position. He knows the role. He's a decent tight end, and he looks good out there. So Noah Gray, definitely a dynasty stash. So there you have it, guys. That is the biggest risers. We'll be back tomorrow with the biggest fallers over the last month. Do keep in mind we are recording this the Saturday before week 14 starts. So anything major happens there. That's why we didn't talk about it. And I appreciate you all, and I'll catch you all very, very soon.